The Trump administration is demanding some concessions from Canada even before the formal launch of CUSMA talks, according to new reporting from Radio-Canada. Sources say the administration is effectively requesting an entry fee from Canada in order to be at the table for trade talks, and the list of trade barriers from the U.S. is extensive. Both the Prime Minister and the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister said the U.S. can't dictate the terms of CUSMA talks, even as the U.S. Trade Representative and the Commerce Secretary expressed frustration over American alcohol being pulled from Canadian shelves.
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
It is.
And disrespectful to America.
Well, it's at the provincial level, right? So we hear from the federal government of Canada, well, it's the provinces, and then we do have two provinces who don't have this. That being said, I think we're kind of at the end of our rope in just asking for them to do this.
For more on this, former Quebec Premier and member of the Prime Minister's new Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations, Jean Charest, joins me now. Mr. Charest, good to see you. You're one of the holdovers from this committee, right? This is old hat to you, right, dealing with this sort of stuff.
Well, they can't get rid of me, so I'm happy to serve. And I think this is a group with a different focus. It'll be on the whole relationship with the United States, and we'll meet next Monday. So we're looking forward to working together.
Well, lucky for you and the rest of the committee, there's been a lot of activity in the run-up to your first meeting. I mean, we heard Howard Lutnick and Jamieson Greer say a bunch of things, zeroing in on the alcohol being pulled off Canadian shelves in particular. So what should the provinces do if that becomes the thing that stops, that becomes an obstacle to the start of talks?
Well, we live in a federal system of government, David, and we're one of the most decentralized federations in the world, and the provinces have total jurisdiction over this decision to withdraw American alcohol from the stores. And they did it for a reason. You know, when President Trump chose to make comments about 51st state and impose tariffs, and we're in a negotiation where it'll be give and take. It isn't all going to be give on the Canadian side and them taking. It'll be a two-way street, and that's the reality of negotiations. So we've been very clear on that, and we expect that the American side will respect that. We understand, though. I mean, we by this point we all know what the modus operandi is on the American side, and the Trump administration, and the art of the deal, and all these statements and declarations and inflammatory statements. And we're just going to remain very focused on our basic interests, stay cool, and deal with what are the real core issues between both countries.
It is, I guess, precious would be the word, that they start a lot of these fights and then complain about being the victim here, right? Like people were buying lots of U.S. booze right up until this started, and oil was going through the Strait of Hormuz right up until it wasn't, right? So it's kind of this dynamic, and capitulation is sort of the opening demand in a lot of cases here. And you had told Radio-Canada that Trump wants Canada to make many concessions before sitting down at the negotiating table, but the U.S. wouldn't make any. So no. Help me understand that dynamic. What exactly do they want Canada to give up? We've done the digital service tax, the retaliatory tariffs. Is there more beyond that before they even start talks?
Well, and when Prime Minister Carney took off the retaliatory tariffs that we put on, we did it because it was in our self-interest also, to be very clear. And when we imposed tariffs on other countries, we hurt ourselves. And I think Mr. Carney and the government was always clear about that and saying to Canadians, we get it, we're doing it because we feel this is a leverage we need. And we came to the conclusion that this was not effective and took them off. And good for Prime Minister Carney to realize that. Now, we know the method. I mean, it's all about you have to give in, and then we'll negotiate at one point. And we've been there. We've seen this movie before. We hear them, and we just want to sit down and start negotiating on the core issues. And by the way, one thing that we do know is that in the American business community, David, they want this trade agreement to continue. They want it to be enhanced if we can do it. We see this as a trade agreement that is in the interest of both countries. This is not a one-sided deal and never has been. And so by the way, we want to be helpful to our American neighbors who we happen to like and respect. I'll give you an example. In the oil and gas industry, we are the major supplier. They produce 13.6 million barrels a day. They consume 20 million barrels a day. We supply them with anywhere between 4 to 6 million barrels a day. They are in a situation where they're depleting some of their reserves. We can be helpful. That's the spirit in which we want to work with our American neighbors.
But what more detail can you provide, if you can, on concessions? Like, what else are they looking, like, obviously, okay, booze, that's one thing, and I take your point that that's up to individual provinces, and it's not a complete ban, it's different, like Alberta, for example, ended their ban. But is it just that, or does it go beyond that, and what would Canada want to see in return before there's conversations?
Well, one of the perennial issues that comes up is the issue of supply management and milk. And by the way, it's interesting because they're not saying get rid of supply management. That's not what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're saying the previous agreement has not been implemented correctly. And frankly, we're ready to discuss how it can be implemented. They have not taken off. They have not occupied the space of all the quotas that they had on that specific issue. And then there's other issues like, the Digital Act or the sovereignty of our own system and AI and those systems on which we need to be very, very focused on our basic, not only economic interests, but also our national sovereignty here. This is about the sovereignty of Canada. The other part of what we see as an interesting thing for us to do with our American neighbors, look at the bigger picture. It should be about critical minerals, of which we have a lot. It should be about energy, defense. Right. It should be about the North. All these things that we should and need to do together to be able to better defend our own respective countries and do it in a way that's conducive with the interest of Canada and the United States.
Well, look, those tech companies do not like any kind of regulation from any country, and they have limitless money to influence the U.S. political system. So that is going to be a persistent challenge, I think, for the rest of our lives and beyond. But the
Europeans are experiencing that right now. I mean, it isn't just us. They're saying to the Europeans, you have to get rid of all your digital legislation, or otherwise we'll cancel the deal. So we're not alone in this posture.
No, and it speaks to the power of bottomless money accounts in politics right now. But one of the other issues that we kind of all lump it together because the Section 232 tariffs are hitting key parts of the Canadian economy while the uncertainty of CUSMA weighs over all of the economy. Minister LeBlanc was on the show yesterday saying that, the U.S. does want that kind of separate. We may end up in a structure situation where CUSMA persists as a global deal, but then there are side U.S.-Mexico deals, side U.S.-Canada deals. What do you think it takes to get any kind of real movement on steel, aluminum, the auto stuff? Because those are Jameson Greer initiatives. Those are Donald Trump initiatives, right? And they're done under a different authority, and nobody can tell the president what to do. So how do you get relief for those sectors?
Well, there's a few things that are going to be at play here. There's going to be more and more pressure on the American side to bring down those tariffs because it is hurting the American economy. Aluminum's a very good example. This conflict in Iran has disabled the ability of a number of countries in the Gulf to supply the American market with aluminum. It takes 10 years to build an aluminum plant. It costs billions of dollars, and they are seriously hurting their own economy. So that's part of what is going to be at play here. There will be midterms, by the way, that will also change the dynamic within the American political system, and Congress will be revived, hopefully. I mean, they will actually have a voice that they're not expressing right now. And then you look at all the common interests that we have in dealing with these. Bringing down these tariffs makes sense for them. Softwood lumber is a very good example. They want our wood, and we're not saying we're the only ones, by the way, who can supply them. That's not our narrative. We're not saying to the Americans, you absolutely need us. What we are saying is, you're not going to get a better partner in trade than Canada. You're reliable, predictable, with laws and commitments that we live up to and respect. And so here are the things that we could do together. I'll give you one example. On the automotive industry and rules of origin, they may want different rules, and this will apply to Mexico and to us. Maybe they want a bigger American content in building cars, for example. We expect that to be part of the things they'll bring to the table that we're ready to talk about.
Okay, I need to squeeze in one quick question because I've gone way over time, but there's a lot of criticism that there are farther advanced in talks with Mexico with formal negotiations set. And yes, the midterms could change the political dynamic, but maybe Mexico could agree with something with the U.S. that could change the dynamic at the bargaining table. How concerned should we be that America may be able to get a concession or a change from Mexico that they then turn around and try to leverage Canada with?
A few things. We're talking to the Mexican side. Communications are very good. Number two, it's not the same list of issues. Think of Mexico and the cartels and the drug issues and the immigration issues, not the same agenda. And finally, there may very well be a scenario by which there is a tripartite part of the deal and then add-ons on both sides, on Canada and Mexico. That would not be a surprise for us, and if it does happen, we'll deal with the issues that will be dealt with in the add-ons.
Okay. Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest, we always appreciate the time. What will you talk about on Monday? There's no shortage of things. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you, David.